Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
This evening we've asked the Budget and Finance Committee to review the Hampton pilot allocation agreement, and it was requested that Mr. Shields, Attorney Shields, come to present the Board of Education. Over the past 3 years, we have met at least a dozen times between the Board of Education as a whole and or the Budget and Finance Committee to review and discuss this pilot allocation proposal. We've had meetings including the town as well over the years, and this goes back to 2010, and 2011. So we've asked Joe to come tonight, Mr. Shields to come tonight, and give a history again of where we are, history of the pilot allocation agreement proposals, and answer questions that you might have that may still be outstanding. Thank you.
Thanks. I brought copies of the proposed agreement for each of you, just to hand out. So what I'm handing out is the proposed pilot allocation agreement for the Hampton Inn, and this transaction, I think, is, the board knows, but there's some new members, all began back in 2006, 2007, when the Hartford Business Park was being planned and talked about. The developer, the IDA, and the town came to the school district and the county and asked if the taxing jurisdictions would support through pilot increment financing the development of a new Hartford Business Park. And at the time, it was first going on, the Hartford Insurance Company was contemplating moving out of the area into another location. And so the project as it was originally planned was to keep the Hartford Insurance Building, to add a hotel, and then an office park, or one office building. At the time, I think it was Dr. Costello, was the proposed developer. And it was requested to have the taxing jurisdictions allocate $2.9 million in principal to develop the infrastructure for the Woods Road, for the Route 5 intersection where Woods Road meets, and for a break-in access from the Woods Road, or where the Yeager property is, into Route 840 to create access for this land. It's 126 acres of property in there. And back in 2008, the Hartford pilot agreement was approved by the taxing jurisdictions, and in 2011, a pilot allocation agreement similar to what I've just handed out to you was approved by each of the taxing jurisdictions for the Hartford Insurance Company. So that's where $2.3 million of improvements were dedicated for the Woods Road and the Route 5 improvements to grow that park. The concept that was presented to the Board of Education at the time was, if the board diverts some of the money that would otherwise come to the taxing jurisdictions as pilot revenue to help pay the debt service that the town would incur to pay for these improvements, that the taxing jurisdictions would be growing its tax base. You would be seeding, the tax base for other properties within the business park to come and be developed and be fully taxable. So the plan was to give a pilot agreement to the Hartford, to a hotel, and to one business park. At the time that the Board of Education that was seated at the time approved the Hartford, the board made it clear that they would approve that transaction, but any future buildings, the district was reserving its right to look at on a standalone basis. So that's what's happening tonight. This agreement, we worked with the town attorney, Herb Cully, and the town officials, and the county attorney and the IDA officials to finalize a form of a legal agreement that we would approve as a firm, as the business terms, are up to you folks, the business terms. The legal terms we've approved. And what that does is, for this project, for the Hampton Inn, the break-in access for Route 840 was built and paid for by the town. They did borrow $600,000. So the request is that the taxing jurisdictions, town, county, and school district, all agree to divert revenue from the pilot revenue that would be paid by the Hampton Inn to pay the debt service, and any remainder that's left over comes back to each of the taxing jurisdictions. Originally, the park was only generating about $8,600 of tax money for all of the taxing jurisdictions. Once the Hartford was developed, the school district is getting approximately, the Hartford generates
Hartford generates $11,000 this year.
Okay, first year. So the school's now starting to get a loan extra revenue right from the Hartford. Under the pilot allocation agreement for the Hampton Inn, the school, there's a schedule, which is the last, Schedule E shows what the revenue stream from the Hampton Inn will be. Yeah, exhibit E, the one that's attached to the agreement though, second to last page. But it's a projection. So the school district in 2012-13, sorry about that, received net $58,975 from the Hampton Inn. The way this would work is the total pilot payment that was made was $66,000 for the 2012-13 year. So you take the assessed value of $2.8 million times the tax rate for all of the taxing jurisdictions, and you allocate to the school, the town, and the county their portion of it. And in the first year, there was only $9,800 of actual debt service that the town had to pay. Because they were paying interest only in the first year of the transaction. Now that the debt service is going to move forward, the town has actually completed the construction and they borrowed the money this summer. The actual debt service for the 2013-14 school year will be $39,300. So this year, the school district would receive $44,977 in revenue. That will decline next year because now that the financing, the total debt service has been completed, the town debt service will jump up because they're going to start paying principal and interest. The payment will jump up to $75,939 for total debt service, and the school will net $18,783.
Isn't that dependent upon the school tax rate?
It's dependent on the school tax rate and the assessment. You're right, that's a good point. That's why the Schedule E that is attached to your agreement is not completed, because the schedule I've created here is just based on flat projections.
It's also based on the assessment remaining static through 2021.
Correct. So the projections that I've run says if the assessment stays the same and the school tax rate stays the same, which historically tax rates go up a little bit, but then that's what you would do. But the way this agreement works, that's being presented to you, just to be clear, is you would take the actual assessment times the actual school tax rate, the county tax rate, etc. The only constant that we now know is, since the town has paid for the break-in access, the Route 840 costs, the debt, and they've done the borrowing, we know what the actual debt service will be throughout the term of the agreement. So under the law, the general municipal law, the district has the right to say yes or no to this transaction. It's a business transaction for the district to consider. Back in 2006 and 2007, when this was going forward, the leadership at the time from the school district and the board were in support of this. And back in 2011, the school district did write a letter saying that in concept, pilot allocation agreement and the break-in access, that they would support the concept. But you reserved your rights and said, at the time the agreements were all done, you would make a decision. So now that all the legalese and all the background work has been done, this agreement is being presented, and I'm here to answer any questions about it. I'm not asking you to make a decision tonight, but just reorient it to this long transaction and make sure that I've covered any questions.
I'm very surprised, Jeff. In 2011, when the school board agreed in concept, what was the zoning and what is the zoning currently for the business park?
Okay, good question. The zoning, I believe at the time, was a planned development park, which had the park being mainly office park developed with that type of a motif. The town did change the zoning between that time and now to a planned development, mixed development, which allows, I think, not just office park and that type of retail and other uses, so the usage has changed.
Is there anything on the horizon for any other kind of development at the park?
I asked the town attorney that right before we started. He said there are some people interested, and now that the utilities are all in the property and the infrastructure's there and the roadways in and out, that's the hope. And that was the hope all along, which would be anything that would come in now would be on the tax roll.
Well, the roadway was not quite what we had anticipated.
Right.
We did it in 2007.
Right. In 2006, that's a great point. In 2007, our thought would be to have an on-off ramp for everybody.
Right. So I think that
The DOT wouldn't grant that, and so now it's that road right in and the zoning did change.
I'm new to all this, but if in 2011 it was planned for office/business park, and it was changed to a mixed, whose idea was that, and when did that happen?
My understanding is it was that the town, as part of its comprehensive plan, changed the zoning designation for the property. And I think basically, my understanding was the developer was having a tough time getting, tenants in there, and the hope was by changing the status and broadening the net, if you will. That's just my understanding.
So the businesses that we're talking, I guess Mr. Curtis talked about, are they mixed, or are they business, or what? You give any inkling as to what type is coming in there?
Consistent with what's there now.
Another hotel,
I can't say that.
so not a BJ's? That was
Well,
the first thing.
I don't, am I permitted to speak?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't want to speak out of order. There are a couple of individuals who've expressed interest, or a couple of companies that have expressed interest in going forward with projects. We're not at liberty, we're under confidentiality with regard to those projects, but they would be consistent with what's there currently. Just to supplement, because Joe obviously is your attorney from Syracuse, I've been involved on a daily basis with this area, as has Supervisor Kaczynski, who is there. The residents of the area petition, not just the one developer who owns the business park. That district, a business park district, was extremely limited with regard to uses, and specifically, if you wanted to have some kind of a restaurant facility within a structure, it was limited as to size. Retail was severely limited as well. The BJ's entity that you're talking about was not proposed to go in the business park. It was along Seneca Turnpike, which is considered a highway business district, and that's where that was going to be. But there are interests being expressed. The important thing, and I don't need to get carried away, but the important thing is that normally the way a pilot works is there's an abatement in the taxes, and you pay a percentage of the taxes for 5 years or whatever, then it goes up, and then it goes up till it reaches the full level. In the case of the Hartford, you folks were kind enough to go along with the allocation agreement, which created an abatement in the taxes. And as a result of that, starting in 2023, the school district is going to generate approximately $300,000 a year in school taxes on this land that was otherwise vacant, generating no revenue or income. As well, with regard to Hampton, and I do want to point out that the first pilot allocation agreement that was done back when the Hartford was done, clearly reflects the fact that it was the intention of everybody. Initially, there were 3 pilots that were proposed. Some of us remember. One was the Hampton, one was the Hartford, and the other was the Costello office building. Well, because they could not get the break-in access, the right-in, right-out, which was delayed until our administration got in, they lost Costello. Costello left. The IDA had stepped up for Hartford because that's hundreds of jobs that were retained in this district. And as well, we were under time constraints because if this didn't go forward, we were going to lose the Hampton Inn. That's why the town went ahead with this. Everybody signed letters telling the IDA we all supported it, and the IDA approved it. So that's the basis it went forward. Now, the residents up there, along with the owner of the business park, have had difficulty. One gentleman owns a substantial parcel, has been trying to sell it for I don't know how many years, hasn't had one offer, and they were concerned that a planned development mixed use as compared to a planned development park be allowed. And they petitioned the board, and we had a public hearing, and that was approved. However, it's still a planned development district, which gives the town great control over the uses and the structuring of whatever goes in there. But that is clearly a very good point that the zoning has changed. As well, what I will tell you is the town is undergoing a comprehensive plan, and we're in the process, hopefully by early next year, to completely revamp all of our zoning. However, it's my understanding that this would remain as a planned development entity. So, I'm sorry, you let a lawyer talk and you get carried away.
Now, the town and the county have agreed to this.
The town has approved it, the county has not yet approved it. So the resolution that I prepared, I've given 2 different resolutions for the board, just for your use. One would be to approve it, one would to not be approve it. The one that I had the approval in there, I had the approval be good for 75 days from the date of the resolution. Because under the general municipal law, all of the taxing jurisdictions have to agree. So if you were to approve it, then we would send a notice to the county saying we approved it, and they have 75 days, which I thought would give them enough time to get it on an agenda, get it through some committee, and get the agreement approved. And it would have to be the same form of the agreement that I've presented to you tonight. So,
Mr. Knoll, are you expecting the board to vote on this tonight?
It's on the agenda as a presentation this evening, unless the board is comfortable to act on it. Certainly, we do that, or we can put it on December 4th agenda for you to act.
Can I say something? The county has approved the agreement as to form. I've gotten approval from the county attorney's office.
with the resolution.
The formal resolution
Yeah.
hasn't been adopted.
Right.
By the way, Joe initially drew the agreement and did the majority of the work, and this mirrors basically the other pilot allocation agreement.
I see no reason why the board shouldn't vote on it tonight.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Because right now is the forum to address your concerns.
Will I be permitted to speak in the open forum? Because there is an open forum. I know Mr. Shields.
Yeah, not right now. No.
Okay, because I have some concerns that I'd like to raise in public session.
So what would be the ramification if we voted no? What happens
Good question.
then?
So if the school board says no, then, under the terms of the pilot agreement, I think the pilot will be terminated ultimately and the properties go back on the tax roll. Because unless they could go back, the county and the town could agree differently, but the school would get its pro rata share of the taxes.
But what happens with the indebtedness the town has
The
already
town would
incurred?
need to find another revenue source, to pay the indebtedness. So the town, you know, the concept, I think the town advanced that money with the hope that this board and the county would approve it as part of the 2006-7 plan. They went and borrowed this money, built the improvements, but technically, legally, if this school board says, no, we're not gonna approve this transaction, and I have given no illusion either way, then, the school revenue would come to the school district, and the pilot agreement under its terms, I think, would become undone, and the IDA would have to do something different with the town, instead of municipal, and then they could work it out. There is a way to work it out with two of the taxing jurisdictions sharing the revenue on that.
Just from a practical standpoint, you've heard me say it before, you know, the town and the school, those taxes come out of the same pair of pants.
Right.
So the pair of pants is on the hook for the $600,000 indebtedness.
Right.
That's kind of the bottom line.
Yes.
And so then, we're talking about, well, do we pay it out of two different pockets or out of one pocket?
Yes.
Just to keep it simple, because
Well, which taxing jurisdiction is larger, school district or the town?
that's a question that I brought up to Kim. So, yeah, I mean, if someone was to be in a situation where they get a town tax bill and a school tax bill, and which would they pay less under? If it was coming out of just the town taxes, or if it was coming out of school and town taxes?
I don't know how that would impact the town budget. I mean, it's, you know, how that indebtedness would change the town budget and what it would do to the town tax rate. I don't know.
Are you suggesting that it might not impact the town's?
No, I have no idea.
Well, it would have to, what's the town's total budget?
What is reserved?
About 13 million.
13 million, so that's.
It would clearly,
5%.
it would clearly impact the town budget. I mean, I don't think there's any, and it's either gets paid here or there, it doesn't make any difference. Important point too, the town has invested $500,000 over and above the $600,000 we borrowed. That was from mitigation fees, because the total cost to do the extension and the break and access, because we ran it from Lowe's all the way to the break and access, we extended the roadway there. The total cost was $1.1 million. The town fronted not only the $500,000, but went and borrowed the $600,000. And obviously, when the pilot ends in 2023, the school district gets $75,000 plus a year in school tax, and the town gets $10,000 a year. So the disparity in what's going to be generated for the school as compared to what's going to be generated for the town should be looked at.
I guess my only, I'm sorry.
But it's, the fees in lieu of mitigation, correct me if I'm wrong, is money that's collected from developers to mitigate impacts of their developments in the town. So it's not
Correct.
technically the town's money, it's money that had to be expended, correct?
Well, it's money that the town has to expend.
Yes.
It doesn't necessarily have to be expended for roads. It can be expended for stormwater, sewer mitigation. There are a number of areas that those funds could be. It was expended on the Hartford project to put the light in by Woods Road. That was mitigation fees. So your answer is yes, it was mitigation monies, but it was monies that the town used, because the total cost of the project was more than 1.1 million. Actually, we've gone over a few $100,000, I believe, and the developer has paid dollar for dollar for anything above the 1.1 million. He's on the hook individually to pay them. So you have the $500,000 from fees in lieu. We borrowed the $600,000, and the developer has paid whatever excess went over and above it. So the $600,000 is just a small piece of the cost. And when the pilot is complete, and even with the excess that's being generated in every year, because it's a positive pilot right from day one, and it's also a situation where the developer pays 100% of taxes. He doesn't pay 50%. He pays 100% from year one. And it generates a positive flow for the school district and the town that's allocated, as Mr. Shields did, proportionately. So you get the greater share of any surplus. Once 2023 hits, you get 75,000, we get 10,000, even though we fronted the other 500,000 and the developer paid the extra cost.
So whenever these new businesses.
100%.
Everything's already.
No pilot.
No more pilots.
No more pilot. In fact, the third pilot, the Costello pilot, is gone because Costello left. He couldn't wait anymore.
And how do we know that that's the case? Because we just got a pilot across the table for the senior housing center, right, across the street.
Right, I think the distinction is no more pilot
Allocation,
allocation agreement.
so there could still be a pilot in there.
Well, it's up to the
That's
IDA.
and.
I know,
Yeah.
so when you say not a pilot, you mean an
Well, I'm
allocation.
talking
No,
about
that's a good
specifically,
distinction.
but I'm talking about specifically anything that's being developed on this business park.
Correct.
You're not gonna come back with another request for pilot.
No, that's not what he's saying. We don't have they don't have the.
The IDA
the
grants
IDA
the pilot.
So they can still grant the pilot on anything that's being developed in there. They're not gonna ask for another allocation.
Okay, okay.
I guess I would say this agreement goes back prior to any of us being in here. Do you think it would think that the town would have entered into this pilot agreement had we not agreed or someone agreed up front that we would take a share of the pilot allocation agreement, or would we have just not developed it?
Well, you need to understand the history of this, because this business park started as the town, and this will answer a bunch of questions. The town was going to create this park up here, okay? Because of a couple of votes on the board, it never happened. And one of the reasons, if I may, why that zoning was put in place and why it got changed was that was specifically put up there because the town was going to own it. And if you recall from newspaper articles, there was a select committee of town employees that were going to judge what was going to go on up there. It wasn't even going to go through the planning board, okay? And that's why that planning was put in up there, okay? Once it went to a private developer, that had to leave because the whole idea, the whole basis of it was gone. And that never got changed till my administration, okay? We changed it back to the planning board, and after that we changed the zoning because it did not comply with what was going on with the planning board in the town.
Are you suggesting that from the inception, the intention was always to change the zoning to mixed use?
No, what I'm saying is from day one, when that part was first, when the idea first came up, the town created a planned business use because the town was going to own it. The minute the town no longer owned it,
Which was when?
when it was purchased by Mr. Adler, which I think was 2006, 2007, something.
And the zoning was changed when?
Not until 2010. 2010 or 2011.
Had the after 2011. But the initial, so when the initial presentation was made to this Board of Education, was there a discussion? Because it had to be after the town, that it was purchased by Mr. Adler. Was there a discussion that the zoning was going to be changed?
That was before my time.
I don't remember, I was there, I don't
So
remember.
I can't tell you what was going on, but let me get
I remember a
back.
meeting with you, and I don't remember you saying the zoning was going to be changed.
The zoning had to be changed.
I don't remember that discussion at all.
Well, I don't believe the question was brought up. If the question was brought up, I would have told you, because at the time that this was being considered by the town, I was the town controller, so I was involved with how the process was going with that town park, and as a matter of fact, very intricately, okay? Because back then, we knew that the Hartford wanted to leave, and that was going to be the key tenet for that New Hartford business park, all right? That's why that zoning was put into effect, because the town was going on. The minute you put it into a private hand, there was no way, because you handcuffed them. We had a committee of 5 people that were town employees, okay, that were going to decide what the owner of that property was going to do with it. I mean, that's ridiculous. So we changed the zoning, we changed it back so that the planning board, which is an independent board from the town board, was now going to review all the projects up there. So, anyway, back to yours. Do I think it would have happened? And again, this is before my administration, probably not. Probably.
Because that would have been a heavy burden on your budget.
Well, a lot changed in 2007 from what it was back in 2000 when the town was planning on it. DOT was going to fund clover leaves coming off both sides. We had money that was coming in from DOT to extend the road through there. Had no interest loans, and actually 60% of it was going to be a grant. We had companies already scheduled to go in there. So the whole environment, the whole thing changed from 2000 to 2007.
The one thing that I just am a little concerned of, again, I try to keep it real simple, so. The horse has already left the barn. There's $600,000 of indebtedness that anybody that's a town, Hartford resident is on the hook. So now we're trying to figure out how we're gonna pay for it. And, you know, if we approve this, then we are, foregoing some revenue. The concern I have is our budget goes out to vote every year. And so if we forego a revenue stream and the budget goes down, are we disproportionately affected as opposed to the town has the ability to simply raise taxes without going to the voters? So it's ensuring the ultimate intent is that the town residents are paying for it and not all of a sudden, boy, if we had this extra 50,000, we wouldn't have to cut A, B, and C. I guess that's my concern. I mean, at the end of the day, we're on the hook for it. It's just how we're gonna pay for it. I don't know, yeah, that's just my concern. School district money relied upon that additional $50,000 that we committed to. And a number of years ago, there was a discussion about conceptually, if they perform and put that road in, which we all at the time thought will enhance the value of that park so that businesses will come in. And then the net gain will go to the school district with the growth in its tax base. We weren't counting on those resources. And so they performed what they said they were going to perform. We had indicated conceptually we were in agreement with that. And going back, we're looking at it now as, okay, this revenue we can take or use it for this. We've already, that horse has left the barn as well, in terms of we're looking at vacant land that the school district was getting $4,200 a year on. And even with the improvements without the businesses in there, with the roads and the lighting and the sewers, we're generating more than that $4,200. And now we're still generating more money with a pilot allocation agreement that we weren't counting on. And we have the potential for all of this growth at 126 acre parcel.
I think also, when it was presented, again, we had the hotel, we had the Hartford, we had the Costello, and we were, this is gonna be great, we're gonna have this big clover leaf, and this business park is just gonna, it's just gonna fill up in no time. And so we were looking at, lots of revenue, we were willing to make that investment in front for all the taxable revenue at the back end. And it just didn't come
Can I
through.
just
So I-
respond to that?
So I guess my question is, at least if you were there, did the board say that we were gonna do this? That we were going to support the $600,000 investment in the road and that we would be allocating our fair share of tax revenue for it? Did the board do that?
There's a couple of different scenarios.
Did any board do that?
They didn't approve it. They
Okay.
conceptually said that they were supportive of
Okay.
it. Okay?
And it was in the first pilot agreement. There is a specific reference to it.
The school board, I've been involved with this right now, too. The school board, at our urging, preserved its rights, because you don't wanna bind a future board, you never wanna say, we would give you this and you're bound. But I think the concept of the park and the growth was an idea that the district wanted to support the growing of its tax base through this pilot allocation. but it is ultimately this board's right to vote, yes or no. And I think that's, you don't have to do it tonight, you can if you want, but we've given you the agreements, and it's not, an opportunity to answer your questions, because some of you
Well,
are hearing it for the first time, right?
Well, yeah, this is the first time I've seen this stuff, and again, it would make my, my thought process a whole lot simpler if a previous board had said, yeah, we're in.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Right.
And
right. Nobody said that
Right.
officially, but they said we support the concept.
We can't reserve our rights and there had to be a vote. We either reserved our rights to determine what we wanted to do, and that was 3 boards ago, or we didn't. There's no, yes, we reserved our rights, but it either is or it isn't.
Well, unequivocally, at my urging, you've reserved your rights to do what you want to do.
Thank you.
The but is that there is a letter that just says the concept of this in 2011 that was written said, if you go forward.
But at the time, the
That's when the
concept of the
600,000
park
was
was a
spent,
business park, right?
Correct.
Zoning is
Sure,
business.
absolutely. No,
And if I may, in the first pilot allocation agreement, there is a specific reference to the fact that it was anticipated that there would be future pilot allocation agreements that would cover the Hampton Inn. So it was in there. You did reserve your rights because you don't know what board you're gonna have at that time, and of course, that board has to vote. But obviously, we wouldn't have gone forward absent the support of the school. Pat and I came over, and we had a meeting with some of you back a couple of years ago, and that's when that letter was generated supporting the pilot.
is that in this packet? Is that right?
Um,
Do you have a copy?
No, that's actually in the Hartford pilot agreement, pilot allocation agreement.
It's about the letter supporting it to the
Oh,
IDA.
I have that letter. I can share that. Yeah. Right, concept.
Can I just make one comment in response to what was said here about the clover leaves, et cetera? Since we've had the break in access over the last 4 years, we've added $20 million to the taxable assessment, wolves in the town of New Hartford. That's $20 million. After we did that, after we completed that break in access, we became the #1 place for developers to come in upstate New York. That's why we got Olive Garden, that's why we got the Moe's, that's why we got all of these other companies coming up here, okay? That's why affordable housing came in. So even though they may not be in the business park per se, those companies would not have come here without that break in access.
Why?
Because you need access to the thruway, and that's what they don't want.
They need the break-in access to the Hampton Inn to
They
get
want-
to the throughway? Huh?
The minute we made that break in access to 840, that created, because that all flows down through the business park, right on the commercial drive, which is the hub right down there. That's why Olive Garden went there. They didn't go to Seneca Turnpike, they didn't go to the Village of Hartford. They wanted to be right there because of that. Because
Well, I'd say it
everything
probably has to
flows
do with
down
the
there.
traffic on Commercial Drive too, right?
Pardon me?
Probably has to do with the traffic on Commercial Drive. Because there are a lot of tenants there before the break-in 840.
A lot of tenants were.
Well, I mean, there's Consumer Square before the break-in 840. Those are pretty
Oh, yeah.
Class A tenants.
Absolutely.
Isn't
But I'm
that-
just saying that we added 20 million in 4 years. That's a lot of money. And that's 20 million that gets added for the school too. That's not just town.
Well, I've never been to Olive Garden, but I don't see how the break-in access in 840 gets me there any faster.
Well, you gotta talk with these people. But that's why it's developing. And we've got development going on in Consumer School right now. We've got additions going on there. Pyramid is coming to us with more additions to their shopping area. So, I mean, that creates a whole new access coming from Rome, coming from the thruway, coming on down, right down into that commercial drive area. And that's what they wanted, and that's where they're coming.
Was there any additional, besides the 840 extension costs and the Clinton Street Exchange extension, did the 600,000 go to anything else other than those two things?
As a matter of fact,
It
Mr.
just went to
Clemmer,
the break
it was above and beyond, as Mr. Cully said, it was above and beyond the 600,000. It really ended up being about $1.5 million.
Yeah, that was here,
Uh,
the 500 film.
Well, 500 came from us and the rest of it came from the developer.
Gotcha,
So it was over 1.1.
But
gotcha.
you keep saying that the 500,000 came from you, but it didn't come out of the budget.
No, that's
It was
our money.
fees and lift.
You gotta understand,
But it
wherever.
has to be used for that.
No, where, you know, whether it's sales tax money, whether it's property tax money, or whether it's money we collect from dog fees or whatever, it's still money, okay? And what do we use it for? Yes, there are some restrictions, but what that does is, that allows us to improve the infrastructure in the town, is basically what it does, as Mr. Cully
But it has
mentioned.
to be very specific increases, doesn't it? I mean, the fees and lieu have to be used in someplace that connects it to some type
It
of
has to be in
stress
a
that's placed on
GIS
the
area,
GIS.
but that takes care of all of our retail space right now.
And wasn't there something about the fees and lieu that you had to expend them within a certain time frame?
Not under the new agreement.
Mhm. And was all that money from the new agreement?
Pardon me?
Was all that $500,000 from the new agreement?
Yes.
The money that
Prior
you're talking about was
administration
from,
expended the old money.
2010 was supposed to be expended by January 1st. The prior administration expended all of that, all of it expended. So we were underneath.
Okay, one more simple question for me. So the allocation breakdown for the repayment, town, county, school is strictly based upon the allocation times tax rate, or the division of the tax rate. So the town essentially's got 7.6% of the county 21.4%, and the school district 71%.
Right. Those percentages will change year to year based on if somebody's tax rate goes up a little bit more than the other ones.
Right.
So each year that calculation's done.
And what about the assessment itself?
The assessment's controlled by the town assessor, and annually each year under the Constitution, the assessor's supposed to put a value on that property. Historically, assessors, unless they do like a town-wide revaluation, tend to leave numbers there, you know. what-
Something like a hotel traditionally, at the end of, say, 10 years, are their assessments higher or lower?
Hotels, I do a lot of tax surety work, so hotels are appraised by the income approach, and you look at the room occupancy, so it really gets into, there's a specific methodology of appraising a hotel. So if the Hampton Inn is a busy and a good occupied hotel, then the assessment should stay pretty same. We've got 5 tax surety hotels on Carrier Circle right now, right in Syracuse. And some of these are really older hotels, but they're occupied, and so their value has sustained and grown. And every once in a while, they come in and they sue the school district and say they want to reduce their assessment. We show them the finances and they go away.
It's
So,
like an airport or something over there, isn't it?
oh yeah, it's a busy circle. So I'm just saying, it depends. Hotels' appraised value are based on their occupancy.
So the 2.45 is really another unknown.
To me, that's an unknown. I mean, the assessor, I assume, went through a process of determining that value.
But it
He has
could,
to certify.
it could decline, because I do recollect in that meeting when Shawna attended, we were talking about the impact of the new hotel on the Radisson, I recall, and I think she said, yeah, but at the end of the day, it was, whatever is the one that's over, and she said, yeah, but that's a 10-year-old hotel, and I think the point is, at the end of this is also a 10-year-old hotel.
Sure.
So I think there's something to be said for the fact that we're counting on a 2.45 assessment and calculating based on, like 5 unknowns, with the exception of the share of the debt of the town.
Right. In the projections that I've done, I try to always project conservatively. So worst case, I didn't reduce the assessment because I don't know, I wouldn't have a figure at all. But I've left all the tax rates static, and if you went back 10 years and looked at what your tax rate is, I assume that it has grown. So there will be some growth on your tax rate, so that number will go up. And if the hotel is busy, then I think the assessment would either stay the same or go up.
I don't understand why a school board would reject a proposal that increases your revenues in the future. Our number one priority is students and their education, and those extra revenues definitely have to help our students.
I think that was the thought of the board when they started this process.
Hartford was not developed.
I guess I'm just gonna kind of limit this conversation here. Is there any other questions for these gentlemen? Because if this goes to vote tonight and we haven't decided, the debate is done. And if it comes up on the next board agenda, the debate is done. So get all your questions out now. this thing has been around forever, and that it's time to close it.
Just to cite one thing, if you find it out,
Yep.
you know, Mr. Cully pointed out that when the Hartford pilot allocation agreement was approved, there's a clause in there. That's on page 2 of the agreement, and it's a whereas clause of the Hartford. It's not in the one you have right in front of you, but I can email a copy of this to get Mary. But basically what it says is, whereas the affected taxing jurisdictions, meaning the school, the town, and the county, also support in principle the approval by the agency of one or more additional payment in lieu of tax agreements within the New Hartford Business Park, and the allocation to the town of payments in lieu of taxes received pursuant to such additional pilot agreement in such manner as will enable the developer to reduce or eliminate its obligations pursuant to the letter of credit that's attached, provided that, but here was the but, which said, provided, however, that nothing contained herein or elsewhere in this agreement shall obligate the agency or the taxing jurisdictions to enter into another pilot. So that's the clause. So there was the agreement to support it in principle.
So just the same question though, which taxing jurisdiction is larger, the town or the school district? So to John's analogy of the pants, where are there more pants, in the school district or in the town?
The number of taxpayers is that?
So where's the taxing, I mean, if we're talking about taking $1,000 out of the number of pockets, where are there more of?
I would think the county would be the largest, and the town.
I'm saying the town versus the school
Yeah,
district.
Town.
the town.
The town.
Any other question?
Hmm?
Without question?
Okay.
It'd have to be the town.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen,
Okay, thanks.
I appreciate you.
Thank you.
for giving us
Yeah,
some
thanks, guys.
idea.
Thank you.
Any other visitors?
Yes. My name is Ed Whiter. I represent concerned citizens of Yellowknife. The good news is that it's come to our attention, at least it appears, we've identified 5 cell towers that have not been identified on the town's assessment, which, when that information is corrected and updated, because we've identified one cell tower that goes back to 1990, and the school has not had the benefit of that revenue stream. We're talking about private companies, Verizon, and those other ones that are out there. I spoke previously with Mr. Jana, thank you. And we're developing that information as we come along, and I'm sure you're gonna see more information, and Mrs. Lawrence and myself, we're working on a project right now where we will be sharing it with the board itself. That's not only for the cell towers themselves, but the antennae, which according to the New York State taxing authorities, you as the school district is entitled to that revenue stream. Now, I'm sure many of you have read the paper this morning about the New York State exemption 490. Believe me, the town's assessment database is in a mess. I was just speaking with my colleague over here, and I know you're all concerned about the revenue stream. Well, if the town, and I'm not knocking the town, I'm just saying, stating fact, because we know, the town's assessment database is a mess. And if somebody would take the time to clean that up, this school district in Hartford would have a source of revenue, the likes of which they've never seen. As I indicated previously, the town assessor has failed to incorporate on the assessment roll for this year, actually a couple of years, I believe, $1 million property right here in Hartford. You get approximately 68 cents on every tax dollar. That's a nice chunk of change. Now, it's a small amount on $1 million, but when you take that and see where these other issues are, where there's mistakes, serious material mistakes on the assessment database, it's going to produce that additional revenue for the school. Now, that aside, I heard what was said by Supervisor Kaczynski, Mr. Cully, and my good friend Mr. Shields, whom I met tonight, because I told him that I like his writings. And I'm pleased myself as a taxpayer that you have this gentleman here working on behalf of the board. With that said, I have heard much to do from the town. There is, I would ask the board to defer any action on the agreement. With all due respect to you, Mr. Stevens, you're right, every dollar that we have, but this is not a rush to judgment. I am a taxpayer, much like you, but there is much to be said about this agreement. Mrs. Lawrence and I have looked at the town's agreement. We are concerned over the language in that versus what the language is contained in this agreement. We've done a lot of studying, we've done a lot of analysis, and we know our job and we know it well. Let me give you an example. The Hampton Inn took out a construction loan of $4.2 million. Now, Mr. Shields, I believe you made reference to $2.8 million as the assessment. I think that is an error. We are going to go through these agreements, and we would ask the board to provide us a copy as soon as possible. We will give you the benefit, and we will share it with Mr. Shields, I mean, I'm sure you will, that we will give you the benefit of what we've gone through the last 4 years. Ms. Soggs, I heard you spoke eloquently. You're right on point on many issues there. We've been in contact with IDA, I've spoken with the people. We've done our videotaping over there, but there's some serious flaws in this. Yes, they had the pilot allocation, pilot agreement back in, I think it was 2000, well, whenever.
Yeah.
It was several years ago. And within a period of time, Kathy, what was that time frame? The pilot allocation agreement had to be signed?
The pilot had to be allocation within 90 days of them taking.
The pilot allocation and agreement had to be signed within 90 days. Well, ladies and gentlemen, guess what? It's 2013. It still hasn't been signed. So what happened? What fell through the cracks? I respectfully disagree with the presentation of Mr. Cully and Mr. Tuzinski because the facts don't support the statements made in part. Not total, but in part. And what we would ask you concerned citizens, give us the opportunity to look over these documents and you can share it with whomever. But remember one thing, Mrs. Lawrence and I and others, we're taxpayers to the school district too. We're trying to educate you, much like everybody would tell us that the New York State 490 exemption doesn't apply or doesn't, even for the library. You all know I'm a member of the Board of Trustees for the library. I was told point blank by an attorney, it's okay to pay it. We have $3,000 coming back. All I ask, and I think Mr. Jadman his concern is well taken, you have an obligation to us, your taxpayers. You have an obligation to the children. But I think we oftentimes use that as an excuse because it's the taxpayers who fund the school district, which allows them to provide these services to the schools. Much like what we've done, we've identified the 490 exemptions. Conceivably, you're looking at $81,000. We didn't have to say a word, but we are much as concerned about funding to you, to this school district, as we are ensuring that the town's assessment database is corrected. That's where the largesse of your problem is. They correct that, and I guarantee you, you will have a revenue stream the likes of which you've never seen. Way more than $65,000 or $66,000, which you haven't received. But take this into consideration, my last thought. You currently have a revenue stream of $66,000 per year. We're going to get somebody said $18,000. Well, I agree with Mrs. Soggs. She's right on point again on the hotel. They go down in value. And guess what? They're going to come in for a reduction, just like the Sanger Town Mall and any other commercial business. That's good business. But who's going to ultimately be sacrificed? We, the taxpayers. And how does that benefit the children if we don't get, for their education, we don't get the revenue stream that was originally promised? I'll tell you right now, based on what I've seen, this is a promise that's made to be broken. And I ask the board to seriously consider the information you receive, to take whatever time you need. You've had this agreement on board for several years now, Mr. Shields? Several. So what's another month? What's another 2 months? But Mrs. Lawrence and I will, upon receipt of your agreement here, we will go through this with a fine-tooth comb, and we will share you our findings. You can say either we don't agree or we do agree, but at least it will give you an insight from a group that's worked on this scenario since its inception. Thank you very much for your time.
Joe, is there any truth, I'm sorry, in 90 days?
I think there is a provision in there that says within 90 days of the pilot agreement it was supposed to be executed. Under the statute, I think if all of the taxing jurisdictions approve this, then that can be corrected.
Item 4, correspondence and communications, Mr. Knoll.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Sleeper. I have some information to you regarding what our attendance rates were yesterday with the National Opt-out Day, and we really saw a slight decrease compared to what we normally see. Yesterday's attendance rates I did not hit the. I also have a letter here from the Harrison Youth Bureau. Several of our students participated in a cleanup. Society students, names, but I'll pass the letter around and commend those students for their outstanding efforts. And lastly, today was school-related professionals day, and we had thanked our bus drivers, secretaries, custodians, mechanics, groundskeepers, monitors, teacher aides, maintenance personnel, all the whole thing. And then the school provided the Hartford Teachers Association also we distributed their thanks to those members as well. So again, our appreciation to the school-related professionals for all the efforts and dedication to help the students in our school district. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Okay, item 5, board committee reports. BG&T committee, Roger 1313.
Yes, ma'am. Hold on. Okay. Thank you. We call the meeting to order at 12:05. This is a long report. We reviewed the district safety summary matrix. Mr. Morgan summarized the information and the references within the document. The safety summary basically identifies items and activities that are currently in place, such as annual staff training and drills, safety practices and procedures, and equipment purchases. So it has captured things that we have done in the past, things that we are currently doing, and things that we would like to do. It also lists items requested for future safety initiatives as reviewed and recommended by the Long Range Facilities Advisory Committee. And long range, for this definition, can be between 1 and 5 years. We did talk specifically about swipe cards potentially on a smaller scale for some of the busier doors, so we're going to look into that for short term. Dr. Levertino reviewed the 2013-2014 safety calendar, which included the mandated items such as fire inspections, fire drills, and safety training. He also reviewed the schedule for the upcoming front desk training for staff, which I guess is more in depth now than it has been in the past, and the items that were covered in that training. The committee has the following recommendations to present to the board. We would keep a single point of entry for the school. All doors will be locked at 7 p.m. on school days unless there is an activity or event in that building that will keep the building open later, just to clarify. When possible, we'll centralize events within a school building. So for example, if there's something going on in the gym in Perry and then there's a need for some program in a classroom, then we put the classroom used closer to the gym so that the activity is taking place in a central location. We would have the day-night custodians use the building walkie-talkies and a cell phone assigned to each school to assist with opening the building if no activity is taking place after the doors are locked at 7 p.m. So if you come to Bradley and the door is locked at 7, but you really need your son's spelling homework, you can dial the custodian's number, which will be posted on the door, and they can come let you in. We have the custodians to be mindful, which they have been doing, to redirect wandering visitors to their event location. So if they are working in the building and they see somebody who is lost or doesn't look like they should be there, they'll direct them to where they need to be. The locker rooms will be locked when they're not supervised. We're also develop an information sheet to attach the building premise use request forms with a checklist to be given to the user titled School Safety Security Checklist of Responsibilities. This would include safety items which the facility user needs to be aware of. This would include things like please don't prop the doors open, be aware of who you have in the building, things like that. Mr. Morgan will redistribute the memos on the coach's responsibility for securing the school buildings during holiday vacation. So if there's a practice going on, what do you need to do? This only has one line in the summary, but I think it warrants discussion at the board, well, at least a little more than a sentence. The committee engaged on a discussion with Officer Colburn on promoting a culture of safety. Dr. Levertino had commented on this at a previous BG&T meeting, I believe, that during a meeting that he attended, and Officer Colburn agreed, giving examples, specific examples, that it is most often intelligence that we get from somebody who hears something or says something or thinks something or reads something on social media, and that is communicated to the appropriate with people within our school building that can prevent tragedies. And I think Mr. Levertino saw something that was directed by a former CIA agent, who said that most of the times they hear that, a a classmate heard that their friend was gonna bring a gun to school or something, and they report that. And we talked about ways that we could promote that culture of safety within our schools, that, it's important for our students and for our staff to know, and it is currently going on, but the more that we can do to reinforce that if you, sort of like, you know, in New York City, if you see something, say something. And I think that that's a really important point to make.
And
Yes.
can I just add, we also talked about, again, you know, just to be a little bit more safety conscious in this, you know, in this day and age. If you see, you know, a package is unattended, you know, if you see somebody, you know, person inside the building that doesn't really need to be there, just be, having everybody learn to be a little bit more aware of their surroundings.
Mr. Morgan also provided the committee with a list of maintenance items that were completed in the months of September and October of 2013, such as repairs to the stadium lighting, which is more complicated than you would possibly imagine, safety measures to enclose the space under the stadium bleachers, and the cleaning and painting of the lower bus storage barn. The meeting was adjourned at 1:20. You are welcome.
It's a very, very productive meeting.
It really was.
Very, very productive.
It's nice to have the chief and,
Yeah. And I think we should thank, Mary and Keith and
Absolutely.
Andy for taking ownership of the whole security program and running with it, as well as the long-range planning committee, which I know we made a priority security measure.
Can I just add one thing? So there was, somebody that was here that was president of the Bradley PTA, and she was asking us just informally about what was going on with the doors. So how are we now, we talked about this last week, communicating this, this.
Tomorrow morning, we have several memos prepared to go out. We have a memo to, each one of the different memos going to different constituencies on practices and procedures that will be in effect beginning tomorrow.
Great.
We talked
Thank
about
you,
the BJT that we would wait until tonight's board meeting before we changed anything that we were doing the last
Yep.
couple weeks, so.
Okay, good.
So.
Can you email me whatever you're gonna send to the PTAs, because I have Lions PTA tomorrow night.
Yes,
Let's
okay.
postpone.
cool, but you can go, John.
I did not know that.
Really, no, but.
I received notification that it's postponed.
Including a sample, we have a sign right now, a paper sign that's going up on the doors with the cell phone and the.
And then you're gonna put together that little fact sheet to go with the.
Yep, that's all right, we have a draft in
Great.
place right now.
Great job, Mary. Thank you.
Really good.
So all of that's prepared and draft format for today.
And maybe somehow, you know, in the character ed that all the elementary schools are doing, maybe they can incorporate, you know, safety in with character ed.
Well, the songs, I was gonna say, we didn't have the, you know, the bullying songs 3 years ago, there wasn't a bullying song, now we have the bullying song. So maybe the next transition is safety and security. Okay, Budget and Finance Committee, 11/13/13.
Okay, we met on November 13th, we called the meeting order at 5 o'clock. We reviewed the budget calendar, so the 2014-15 fall budget calendar was reviewed and will be presented at the December 3rd board meeting. We also reviewed first quarter reports, first quarter of 2013-14 financial reports and budget transfers were reviewed and will be presented by the board tonight. Retirement system fund balance and health insurance projections for the current year also. We had a tax collection summary, and we were pleased to report 97% of tax payments were made prior to the end of the collection period. And we had a positive net gain of $22,000 due to the positive cash flow from the district's ability to keep the late payment penalty fees. Yeah, that's substitute review rate. This was kind of odd. So there's non-instructional substitute hourly pay rates that have been static for about 10 years. And so we talked about ways to tie that to some benchmark so that we don't have to either approve an increase in the hourly rate every year, and so we don't also have them static to 10 years. So a proposed solution can be presented to the policy committee for further review. We reviewed the pilot agreement for Clover Communities. Again, this is a new 5-year pilot agreement that's been approved by the Amelia County IGA. The district received an additional $1,200 in the 2013-14 building. Again, we don't have any say over these pilots, we just.
What's Clover Community?
It-
That's a senior housing
Yeah,
by BOCES?
yeah,
Okay.
across the street from BOCES.
Okay.
We reviewed a section of the 490 charges, community information provided to the school attorney regarding sewer fee charges. Confirmed the district is entitled to a refund, so that's good news. And the request of the town meet with the district officials to review the refund calculation prior to the calendar year. We also reviewed the information that has to be provided to all our employees regarding healthcare law, which is a non-issue because our benefits plan is compliant. We reviewed a shared services agreement with the town for salt. So we purchase on average $3,000 of salt from the town each year. And we made the stipulation that it's a salt sand mix, no brine. Apparently there's some potential issues with brine. And that was it. The meeting was adjourned 6:30. Right, yeah, so we are not going to
Is
get.
that what they were talking about? They were gonna do this new mix or something?
I thought it was good, and then all of a sudden people were,
It's not, okay.
I never heard of concerns with brine, but they're, yeah, I don't know.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that. Staffing and curriculum meetings?
Yes, we met, yesterday, and, basically we reviewed, school improvement plans from, Mr. Hyde, Ms. Butcher, and, unfortunately, Cindy Langone was not there, and we received, plans from, Mr. Levitino and Ms. Spring. And basically, you can read through, I'm not gonna read through all of this, but basically, as you can well imagine, most of the school improvement plans focused on Common Core and implementation of Common Core. And, as you can see, it was, helping teachers implement things like, the modules, grade level data analysis meetings, flexible guided, math groups, collaboration and sharing regarding math instruction, concerns associated with the shifts to Common Core, helping students who continue to struggle with reading. Again, you can see from Miles, journeys, flexible guided reading, flexible guided math. So most of the things that First Elementary School was focusing on was obviously implementing, core and aligning the modules and, making the rollout as smooth as it can get. Dr. Levitino and Jennifer Spring, again, also talked about Common Core and talked about how the, in English 7, 8, and 9, there are sort of, they've used the first module for English and they are sort of adapting, not adopting, but adapting as they go along the second, third, and fourth modules to sort of make it our own. He talked about Math 7 and 8, adopting and adapting the curriculum modules, talking about Algebra 1 and how these students are sort of in the safety net where they will take the Common Core test and they will also take the Regents exam. So sort of, working with them. At the high school, again, aligning the curriculum to align with Common Core, integrating more close reading and inquiry-based activities in the curriculum, aligning the required research paper in English 10 with Common Core standards, and then they'll be realigning pre-calculus as right now we have the calculus class, right, the Algebra 2, right, used to be Algebra 2 and Trig, and now we're going to be putting Trig in with pre-calculus, but many of our students skip pre-calculus, so that would mean they'd be skipping Trig, so we need to sort of like work that out and align that by the time these students get up to that program. We talked about the New York State, the NYSUT resolution that was given to us, and we discussed the resolution calling upon the Commissioner of Education, the New York State Board of Regents, and the United States Congress to reduce the use and over-reliance on standardized testing, to reduce federal testing mandates, and support the role and focus on multiple measures of student learning and school quality and accountability systems. And we talked about this for a while, and we did not take any action, and we really felt like we wanted to explore the idea of perhaps developing our own resolution. Something that we felt like the resolution that we were given was sort of like all-encompassing and wasn't as specific to New Hartford, and we wanted to sort of do a little more research and maybe do something that we could present to the board that would be a New Hartford resolution. So
Was that the consensus of the whole committee?
Yes.
Yeah, it was. It was. There was some really, I'm gonna paraphrase from our discussion, you know, there was some good stuff in there, but we thought that a more combined approach from the school, you know what I mean, together with the board, with the administration, with the teachers, would be more powerful. In May, you know, like our last meeting in Miles, you know, where we all got together and shared ideas, was probably, you know, a great place to start with that sharing of ideas and presentation of the school positions.
And finally, our last action was we reviewed the resolution to approve the 2013 professional development plan, and we did approve it 3-0. And we adjourned at 5:45.
I have a question. I don't know, Common Core at the high school level, at one time I thought it was gonna impact the way our schedule, whether we could have, you know, semester-based schedule. Is that still an open hot ticket?
Still unresolved.
Wow.
And the issue is when we moved away from New York State exams to go to park exams, which are multi-state exams, how frequently will they be offered? And if they're only offered in June, many of our high school courses are semester-based and end in January. So Mr. Mettleman is aware, he's working with state education, and what we're hoping to hear is that there'll be multiple opportunities during the year for students to take those exams.
When are we hoping to get back that information?
I don't have any date. Those, the first of these exams is scheduled for next June.
Next June, okay. I mean, I don't know, if he's not making any headway, is it something that we would wanna go and send Bob to, you know, New York, you know, to Albany? I mean, cause that to me, that is huge.
It is.
That is our whole basis of our high school curriculum, that capability of taking semester blocks, much like the collegiate level. I mean, personally, I just think it would be a step backward. It would devastate our whole.
You know, what part of our discussion, Ms. Luker, was that with the Common Core, particularly with their math pathways, in one sense, it'll be a step backward from us in that we would have fewer students eligible to take upper level math like Calculus A, B, and Calculus DC, because essentially they're taking a course that we call Algebra 2 and Trig, and they're dividing it into 2 courses, which, you know, is just more math for students to take. On the issue of the park assessments, you know, certainly we have to hear from state education. New York City played a big role. At one point, the state education department was going to eliminate January regents, if you recall, and New York City kind of stepped up, and that was reinstituted. So, assuming that New York City still needs those mid-year final exams, I'm optimistic. And the fact that the park exams are computer generated, and my understanding is the way they're designed is that unlike a Regents exam now where everybody has to take it at the same time, there'll be multiple versions of the exams, and there's a window that you'll be able to take it. So because there's multiple versions, they might be able to use some of those versions in the January timeframe. But that's really speculation on our part. We're waiting to hear.
And then, you know, we've communicated it to District Superintendent Mettleman, who's communicated to the State Education Department, so we're just waiting.
Okay.
Sure. Vince, I mean, just in generally speaking, do you think that they could possibly stay this course? I mean, with the assessments, with the way that they're, I mean, I feel like we're putting all of our eggs in this Common Core basket, and New York State is one of the only states that is all in, 100% testing, everything, and I cannot fathom that they could stay this course, at least with the testing, like, back off a little bit. I mean, what do you think is gonna happen?
I don't know, Ken, or Kim, I'm sorry. Beth, I don't know.
I get that all the time.
You know, I think that, I don't know anyone, whether it's a teacher, a parent, or an administrator, who believes that the implementation of this plan was right on.
I think it was even a little on?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
people have concerns about the plan. Some people support the Common Core standards, but don't support the implementation, the timeline. Some people don't support the reliance on standardized testing or the amount of standardized testing, which is actually in large part a federal mandate, not a state mandate. The fact that we have to test every student in grades 3 through 8 in ELA and math is a federal mandate, which is why the NICET resolution included a petitioning to the US Congress to cut back on some of those mandates. So there's lots of objections in lots of different arenas. So I would tend to agree with you that because of the scope, I mean, it comes from everywhere. It came from school superintendents right at the very beginning, that this is an unrealistic timeline, and putting APPR on top of Common Core, on top of standardized testing, was a recipe for disaster. So, you know, it's been opposed, but the you know, there's some that believe there's good in there, and so I don't know how to answer that. I don't know how to answer the question, but.
I just feel, I mean, I think Gina and I were talking about it, like, I think that there's fundamental strengths to the core itself, but there's a reason that no other state did what New York State did.
And is that true? I mean, how are the other 45 states rolling out the Common Core? Not like
You know, I do a little bit of reading. Kentucky was the first state to adopt the Common Core standards. They won the first round of Race to the Top funding. And last year, or 2 years ago, they were the first to implement Common Core assessments. And the news out of that was very similar to New York. They saw a steep decline in students that were deemed proficient, and there was a public outcry as well for some of the same reasons that you're hearing in New York. I just read today that North Carolina released some of its results, and similar to New York, they saw a steep decline in students that were proficient. You know, I don't have a state-by-state plan, you know, what some states are doing. Some states have backed away from some of their original implementation or taking a longer view, and they're beginning the assessments in the lower grades where the students have had several years advantage of the Common Core, and phasing it in a little slower over time. And there are some states, I think there are 4 states that are considering withdrawing from.
But Vince, I thought the Common Core standards came from the federal government.
No, they did not. They came from the
But if we don't implement.
National Governors Association.
But if we don't implement it, we lose certain federal funding.
Well,
50,000 in 4 years.
Race to the Top funding was federal funding. It was I forgot the amount, it was $700 million for New York, right? Do you know the figures? 700 million for New York? And
50,000 in 4 years.
there were conditions on the funding. In order to get the grant, there were conditions. And one of the conditions was that they didn't use the term Common Core standards, but they used the term college-ready standards, and I forgot the exact terminology, but the result was that it was the Common Core. They were
But aren't there 45 states that are using the same?
46 states that have adopted Common
So
Core.
if it didn't come from the federal government, where did it come from?
There's 2 groups, the National Governors Association and Chief School Officers Association. I may have gotten that a little bit wrong, but there were 2 groups that met to devise national standards.
And so are all 45 states using the same 6th grade math modules?
No, no. The standards are a set of, standards are what students should be able to know and to be able to do. So
That's set.
That's set.
45.
So the basis for the Common Core ELA standard is that students will be able to read complex text, make inferences, and be able to defend claims with evidence-based. That's Common Core in a 1-sentence nutshell, Common Core ELA. So it says what students should be able to do. How you teach students to do that is a local decision, curriculum issues. And New York State, for the first time ever, started to produce very specific curriculum. In the past, New York State produced standards, again, saying this is what they should do. Just recently, they've got into the business of producing and offering curriculum that gets down to the, not only the lesson level, but within the lesson, it allocates 15 minutes for this, give this graphic organizer to students, and that's really very, very brand new on the state's part. Now, New Hartford has a mix in our K-5 curriculum. We are not using the standards. We had committees that met over several years, and they selected other materials from, more established publishers. In the junior high curriculum areas, we are using the modules more. In the English, as Ms. Phillipson said, there's a mix of, we had the teachers work with the first module to get a feel for what Common Core instruction, what the state is looking for, and their plan is then they will adopt our previous local curriculum to fall in line with that. And math is more dependent on the curriculum modules, so we're at a mix of using it. And I don't want to get into this too much, but there's one other objection that I hear every once in a while, and I don't understand it. You hear the objection to data mining.
That's
what information is being collected, who's collecting it, and what are they doing with it?
I don't know if I know all the answers to that, but,
Okay, good, so, because I feel like I should know this, and parents, I'm like, I don't know.
No, we heard that in the committee, we heard a little of that from Maureen regarding the data.
the state requires that we submit data on student performance. We have to tell them how the students scored on these assessments.
By name or just aggregate? Is it Billy failed
It's by name.
math test?
Yeah, because each student has a unique identifier number that follows the student. That's part of the whole Common Core conception, is trying to help people moving from state to state. So before the Common Core, if you move from New York to Arizona, I think Arizona's the one that did it. So New York to Arkansas, there wouldn't be a seamless transition, but now there would be. But my understanding now is that New York State has contracted with private industry to manage some of that data.
So the data goes to Albany, and then does it stay in Albany, or does Albany give it?
We don't know.
Well, it's no different than the data that we have to send today. Aren't they getting all of our regions? Do they get all of our data today on our
Yes.
standardized tests? So
I think the
yeah, there's
issue,
more tests,
Right.
okay, but they are getting the data
well, I think the
today.
issue is that previously it stayed within the state education department and didn't go out to third-party contractors.
Is that because New York State doesn't want to hire any more people, and therefore they're just?
I don't know the reason.
But what is the widget that the third-party contractor is providing us after they look at the data? What do they do with it?
Good question. I'd have to do a little more homework on that.
My
Really targeted
perception,
Google
if I
ads.
may speak, I think my perception is that then they can identify what students in your building might need and then approach you with a neat little package of, here are some, materials that you can use, and they try to sell them.
$9.99. Yeah.
But we are today, I mean, I just want to be clear, our standardized test, Regent scores on that.
They're reported to the state.
Yeah, they're reported to the
But
state.
now-
So
But I
is the
think also
concern a
just-
red herring, or is it real?
No, it's real.
It's real.
It's real.
Takes a lot of time.
Vince, can I ask a question? How much latitude does the district have to say, not so much on that? Like, I mean, what can we say yes to and what
I
can
did
we say
inquire
no to?
about the third-party vendors and
Can I do
their,
more with the curriculum and the testing and how we choose to implement it? How much latitude does the district have?
take them one at a time.
I got like 50 of them.
The assessments, we have no latitude. We are required to assess students in those areas. So, none.
with curriculum, we have more latitude. We can, we chose, there's a recommendation to adopt the Envision Math program and the Journeys Reading program. Those are local decisions. Other school districts chose the modules. Some school districts choose to write their own curriculum. So there's quite a lot leeway in the curriculum that we choose, what the teachers are using on a day-to-day basis in the classroom.
And didn't you say, Vince, yesterday also that like, for example, they give you these texts to read that support this standard, and we're looking at, we're like, gee, these texts, they seem a little easy for us. We've been using a little bit, more complicated text. So we can certainly keep using the books that we've been reading. Tuck Everlasting, or the example that you gave, that we've been using, that is, a little bit more sophisticated than what they have recommended, and that's fine. But let me just say something about the data. But the other thing about data also, Vince, correct me if I'm wrong, they're not taking that data only just to send it to the state. I think teachers are using more data to see how the kids are doing, right? And they're using that data to say, to teach.
We talk about data. Our focus tries to use data to inform instruction. So we don't want to collect data just to collect it, but we want to collect it so it gives teachers information about how students are doing and what they can do to help. And when you talk about data collection, in my view, anytime a teacher asks the class a question, what's 2 + 2, that's collecting data. Who knows the answer, who doesn't know the answer. So that's called formative data, where it's very informal, and it's designed to give the teacher some feedback about how the students are going, so they know whether to have to reteach or they can move along. And then there's more formal data that are tests and quizzes that are given that try to assess what students know and can be able to do whatever periods of time. And the Envision and Journeys math programs come with assessment plans so that we don't have to write our own tests. There's a science to writing a good test question and putting a test together. So there are those tests. APPR required that teachers be measured in part or evaluated in part on student performance, and in many cases in areas that were never tested before. And so the districts had to come up with plans to measure student growth and or achievement. And I think one of the focus that we had that I think we took the right path is that we made a conscious effort in as many areas as we could to not create additional tests. But you can measure growth with the assessments you already have in place, final exams, Regents exams, and measure growth based on something else the student has already taken. So while many districts across the state, they've locally added many, many more tests to their curriculum to measure APPR, which is not, it's measuring student growth, but it's for the purpose of evaluating teachers. And I know of a lot of districts that, when one of the major complaints that you will hear is that there's too much testing going on in schools. And I agree 100% that there is a lot of testing. New Hartford at least has taken a stance to try to limit that in regard to APPR. Now, we were not able to do it in all cases, but in many cases, there are no additional APPR tests.
So the end result is New York State's taken $700 million, with the majority of it going to New York City, and we still don't know if Common Core will work.
Pretty good way of saying it.
Well, there's a couple of good news in the meeting, y'all. When the elementary administrators were talking.
What meeting?
Well, the
Staff
committee,
meeting.
the one we're talking about here. Alan and Maureen made both comments that K through 2 are really getting it. That implementing it in a way that it doesn't affect them. Right now, today, the sacrifice of our other students that are right in the throes of it, sink or swim type deal. But that the K through 2, it looks like they're getting it. you know, so that's good news. But the other good news is Eddie got a 3 in his math test the other day.
No,
But-
I think, Vince, you said the same thing on the debate on whether to roll it out at a K level and let everybody else. Now, if you're a mother of a 5th grader who's stuck in a paradigm because you say, I'm gonna forfeit all that generation of kids at the expense of implementing and, well, I'm just saying,
That's
so.
what's been done.
Right, and so you're right, so I don't know that, and again, everybody's got a personal vested, so the state took is that we aren't gonna forfeit a decade worth of kids, whether you wanna pick 4th grade through 12th grade or 3rd grade through whatever, we're gonna make everybody go through it. Now, maybe the 8th grader will only get this much, and the kindergarten, who's gonna take it for 12 years, is gonna get this much. But the other
The 8th grader
option
might
is the
not
other
graduate.
kid gets a 0, you know,
But
much.
here's the thing, Kim, is that, or speaking as a parent, I have a 4th grader, an 8th grader, and a 9th grader. My 4th grade son, who started in 3rd grade, he's doing okay. My 8th and 9th graders, yeah, they're getting a couple of years good, but it's killing them.
Yeah, no, I
It
It's
is
what?
killing them, so
Sorry?
it's killing them. I mean, it's not, I'm not saying that like Yahoo, they're getting, I mean, but in math, for example, the assumption is that they've had that math for their entire career. It's like handing you a book at chapter 19 and saying, tell me what happened.
I totally get it, but at the end of 12th grade, if the premise is that critical thinking is required for the next generation to succeed in the world, then even if they get a sliver, and it's a little bit painful, is better than 0.
And I think that's exactly where I'm at, but however, what they failed, they made a miscalculation, because it's not a little bit painful, it's traumatizing. And kids are opting out in their minds, let alone going to school. One more point, if I might, Lisa, regarding this meeting, it was great. The administrators did an unbelievable job presenting their improvement plans. One of the things that the committee asked each one of the administrators is what could the board be doing for the teachers and for the administrators that could make their lives easier regarding this stuff. And the one continuing answer was time. We need time, and Vince kind of summed it up at that meeting. So what's happening is, you know, we've got this ELA in math, we've got to do better on these tests, boom, boom, boom. So especially at the elementary level, we got this thing, well, wait a minute, we got history and science and music and athletics and everything else, and so we're trying to keep this bubble out here with the pressure to get those tests is doing this. And so you can feel the frustration of teachers and in that type of environment, and kids in that type of environment. And so the answer came back to time. Maureen and Alan said, you know, that the summer time that, I wasn't here, but the summertime that you guys allowed the teachers to come in and do some extra work and learning and stuff was fantastic, and to keep that in mind when we're talking about that again coming up this summer. But, you know, Lisa kept bringing up the point, you know, well, what about the school day? You know, is it long enough under these conditions? And so that was a lot of the discussion. Teachers need time.
Because it's so new and so different and harder, I mean, it's really, at its bottom, it's more difficult. Teachers need time to understand what that is. They're learning just as much as students are. And, you know, right now in the junior high, I think, has a huge challenge in that the modules in math were finally fully published at the end of September. And so, you know, when they started the school year, they knew what the curriculum was going to be until about now. And so, you know, they're literally a half a step ahead. And what do you do? So we do try to provide time for them to do that. But we're also cognizant, and they're cognizant, that they don't want to be out of the classroom to read the modules, because now they're not providing that instruction, and there's a substitute. We have great substitutes, but, you know, they don't have that training either. So it's really a difficult balancing act to try to get people familiar. Teachers are great about sharing ideas. Well, they need that time and space. And right now, I would say a lot of them are figuring out what are the good ideas, what are the bad, you know, what are the ideas to throw out. You got a resource here. You got 3 people who live it every day, and they're all teaching the modules.
And they're still smiling.
I'm not teaching them.
Oh, that's right, no. Yeah, one is doing the journeys and Envision, and Sue Rummel teaches English at the junior high, and Donna Colbrenner teaches 6th grade. And our 6th grade is a little bit of a hybrid. So they have Envision math, but they're using the state modules for ELA. So I invite them to join the discussion.
Yeah,
They're-
Well, I would like very much to take an opportunity to tell you all, and I wrote it down so I would not forget, that on behalf of the NHT, I think we all appreciate your interest and concern about the Common Core and trying to comprehend what students and teachers and administrators and parents are going through every day. And I think it's wonderful that you're having this discussion and that you're including us and asking us for feedback. We want you to be knowledgeable about what it is that we're going through because we live it every minute of every day, and it is exhausting.
Can imagine.
It is absolutely exhausting. And I think frankly, it's taking its toll on some people. I wonder also if you would like to see any of the materials. Perhaps you'd like to see what a module looks like, and you can look at the scripting of it. Or you can see like a recent benchmark test that we took for journeys, which was 5 passages done in one sitting. So it's eye-opening for the parents. Just finishing parent-teacher conferences, they had a lot of questions and concerns, and but they really understood it better after they saw. They don't like it, but at least they know what where it's coming from, and that we're all trying so desperately to help their student. We're not like, beating it into them, no, you have to sit and take this test for 90 minutes. We're trying so hard, but it is frustrating.
Do you think in 10 years you look back and think, oh my gosh, sort of like a new teacher?
Yeah, because I'll be
coming into-
retired by then.
So you'll be on the So you'll be on the I mean, it's like a new teacher coming in and teaching a new subject matter. You're only one step, to your point, Vince, ahead of the subject matter content. But to the point of, I would love to see a module.
Yeah.
Like, I wanna see what is the substitute for Talk Everlasting? Is it something that's so bizarre that we're like, wow? But keep in mind that we still have made the choice here in this district not to use the modules, right? We are using a hybrid,
No.
some,
No,
some,
there are
some.
We are using the modules.
Yes, but 6th grade decided as a team, right, to use the modules. It wasn't like we all just said wham, bam, and you know what I mean? So Vince did
Oh, yeah,
elaborate.
Well, we had-
many of us were
Teachers were
saying
involved
that.
with the decision.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, so even if the modules after a year are like, oh, look we're not liking this, we could go back to what we were doing in our previous curriculum, right? I mean, if it turns out
Well,
this is.
If it was aligned with the
No,
Common Core.
you really
We
can't.
can't go back to open board.
You have to address the Common Core standards, because the bottom line
Address the
is
test.
that the high school exams are graduation requirements. You don't graduate unless you pass.
No, but I'm saying the modules themselves, if after this year, the modules in the 6th grade, you tried them and you're like,
Oh, you mean they can go back to what they were doing,
yeah,
that
we
was
can
open core.
adapt, right,
But they,
right,
but
right.
they can adapt a new.
We can adapt
a
Right,
hybrid or
yeah, and a hybrid of
Or
course.
you can
So-
look at another publisher or something like that,
Exactly.
so that's what you're saying.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The standards are gonna change, right? We all know that the critical thinking standard's not gonna change. However, the method by which we roll that out and do the work as a collaborative team, and I didn't think that, I didn't take it as you were disgruntled about that. I just wanted to share that as a team, we're moving forward, and maybe in 10 years when you're on the beach, you can call up your teachers and say, you having fun yet? I don't know.
And I think also, I saw this report about the state of Massachusetts, who I think adopted a Common Core-like standard, I think 20 years ago or something, and they did it, and people were kicking and screaming, and now 20 years later, they have the results to show you, and their scores are through the roof. I mean, they're competing against,
France
and
Germany,
Taiwan
right,
and
right.
Singapore and Korea and South Korea, so in math. So I mean, I think, like you're saying, if we can get through this hard beginning, then I think we can see the rewards at the end. And I know, again, you guys probably won't be there, and we won't be here, but someone will be.
The question's gonna be, and absolutely, and the question's gonna be, how many kids are we gonna sacrifice? And how many teachers are we gonna sacrifice? Because that's what it's gonna come down to. Teachers are going to leave, and kids are not gonna graduate. And what is acceptable and what is not. That was the miscalculation. Miscalculation was it wasn't gonna be that bad, and it is.
What I don't understand as a school board member, why, our students were doing great, and other districts similar to New Hartford were doing great. And now the state has said, all right, you're gonna change, and your studies are gonna be exactly like any other inner city school or any other suburb. You're gonna be their studies are gonna be exactly like it. Well, we were doing great.
Well, We have been, New Hartford's always been a very high-performing school, absolutely. If Dr. King were here, he would say that the standards have always been the same, whether they're the 2005 standards or the Common Core standards. They are the state standards, so, they're the same standards for students in Rochester and Westchester and Adirondacks and New Hartford. The local schools can determine the curriculum in the classroom. So, to be fair, it's no different. The standards have always been the same. They're ramped up now. And I think, one of the things that I've heard is that this is designed to make, the buzzword you hear is college and career ready. New Hartford certainly has produced enough students that are college and career ready. We have a great track record with that. But be that as it may, make no mistake, we've been working very hard to implement the Common Core. We believe that that is the standard that our students will be held accountable toward to graduate from high school in New York State. And in my view, we'd be remiss if we did not try to put our students in that best light.
Vince, what's gonna happen
No,
when,
we gotta
and I
do it.
feel like so much of what we do is, I feel like, driven by downstate needs. That when downstate kids who don't have, the city school districts that don't have the resources that we have, when 50% of their kids don't graduate. So here we are ramping up our, to the point that you made, where we've already had kids who are college and career ready. And then when 50% of those kids don't make it, which is how New York State got into the boat that it got into in the first place, right? It was lowering standards to accommodate downstate, and then what happened?
If you extrapolate, Beth, if you extrapolate if you extrapolate our results today, the 8th grade, which is gonna be the first class that does not have a safety net in the Regents examinations, 50% of them are not gonna graduate from New Hartford. If you extrapolate our results.
If you say the results in grade 8 carry over to the.
If you extrapolate the results that we got, 50% proficiency.
And that, that's one of my criticisms. I don't believe the state will allow that to happen.
And that's what I'm saying, then what is the point? If they can just fiddle with the results to fiddle with the test to get the results that they want, then what are we doing?
And certainly one of the criticisms of testing is that determining who's proficient is subjective. I mean, there's a group that gets together and says, you have to answer this many number of questions correctly to get a 3, and that changes year to year. It changes from year to year.
We're gonna cut that discussion off. Thank you, curriculum team, great job, thank you all.
So are we gonna see a module? We'll put it on.
I'll be happy to show you.
I think it would be more useful if one of you guys actually
I've got one right here, as a matter of fact. Get rid of my room.
Yeah, we've already talked about our.
I'll be at the meeting Monday.
That's it.
I'll leave that to you.
For the junior
Put it
high.
on our.
For parents, the ELA and the math teacher.
Yeah,
That'd be great.
And thank you, teachers, for your honesty.
Thank you.
We
Always
appreciate
welcome
your
your
And thank you
input.
for your curiosity and your, quest for knowledge to understand what we're going through, honestly.
We're all in this together.
It's
Okay.
confusing.
6, new business.
Can I just report, I'm sorry, can I just give a quick report on community relations that we
Oh,
had
sure.
at 6 o'clock tonight?
Okay.
Just very briefly, I will not start a big discussion, that was just my point. Bad. Just really quickly, we just had a community relations committee meeting, just sort of looking at our goals, and very quickly, 3 things I just want to touch upon is that we have started in an effort to get out some more information about what's going on in our district to the wider New Hartford audience. We have started sending out a monthly update to the New Hartford Town Crier and to all the media about just focusing on different areas of the school that we think are interesting and informative to the public. So we had one in the November issue, and we will have one in the December issue, and each month going forward. That's also going to be going to the rest of the media and also be put on our website. That was number 1. Number 2, speaking of website, we are trying to, it's a new website, we know there's some kinks in it, so we've heard a little bit of some little small problems, and we're hoping to, try to address those and, make sure that it's user-friendly and everybody can find what they need and can, use it as much as, as possible. And then finally, one of the things we talked about was, communicating with other constituents, and I think we were all happy with the mixer that we had, at Kathy Cannoli last month. I personally thought it was just an excellent event, and, we really enjoy hearing from you guys in a formal basis. And I think we have one, we're talking about having one with, administrators as well. And I think those are all positive, really settings to get, I heard some stuff that I didn't really know, and I just think it's a great way to sort of meet you guys and have a drink and whatever. So,
We all enjoyed it very much.
yes.
Lisa, what about the athletic advisory committee report that
Yeah,
went to the
we're
community
supposed to get a
relations?
report in January. I think it's on the agenda for January. Yep, for January.
Taking a long time. I mean, no, I'm serious, because we did it all last
Well,
summer.
no, we got the report, we got the report in August, and then we're gonna
Right,
get a
that's what I'm saying.
progress report in January.
And then they want a mid-year report.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay,
I'm done.
thank you, Lisa. Item 6, new business. A, personnel, 1 appointments.
It is recommended that the following teacher be appointed to the per diem substitute teacher list, pending satisfactory clearance for employment by the State Education Department. Mark Montesanto, certified in social studies grade 7 through 12, students with disabilities grade 7 through 12, social studies.
Second.
Okay with that. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? I'm abstaining, so it's 6-0. 6B, intermunicipal agreement.
It is recommended that the intermunicipal agreement between the New Hartford Central School District and Madison Oneida BOCES for the term of November 1, 2013 through June 30, 2014 be approved.
Motion?
Moved. Second.
Thank you. Discussion?
Is this a new agreement, or is this an extension, or is it ongoing?
Annual agreement.
It's an annual agreement for
To
legal,
obtain legal services and to obtain BOCES aid for certain legal services.
are the fees the same as
These are
last year?
The same through the BOCES, yes, it's a contract for BOCES.
No increase in fees this year?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
That's good rate.
We do
Yeah,
obtain
it-
BOCES
it-
aid.
yeah.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes 7-0. Item C, Committee on Preschool Special Education.
The recommendations from the Committee on Preschool Special Education's meeting of November 1st are presented for approval.
Moved. Second.
Thank you. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? C passes 7-0. D, Committee on Special Education.
The recommendations from the Committee on Special Education's meetings of November 5th and November 8th are presented for approval.
Motion?
Move. Second.
Thank you. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? D passes 7-0. Item E, 504 Committee.
The recommendations from the 504 Committee's meeting of November 5th are presented for approval.
Motion?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion?
Where are they,
Where are what?
the recommendations? If I was moved for the meeting.
They're in the packet.
Unless you agree on
I didn't get it.
That should be
that. I do
right
not
in front
have
of
a copy right
Which one? These are the,
you. There should be a
There's
504
one.
preschool and a CSE.
oh, these are the preschool, right?
There
The
should be 3,
preschool, special ed, and 504.
Oh, okay. Sorry,
They all look
sorry.
the
I thought they all look the same to me. Sorry.
Yeah.
504.
Okay, yeah.
All those in favor? Opposed? Abstention? D passes 7-0. E, I'm sorry. F, Treasurer's Report.
It is recommended that the treasurer's reports for July, August, and September of 2013 be accepted.
Moved. Thank you.
Second.
Thanks, Paul. Discussion? All those in favor?
Oh, yeah, I've got just a couple of quick questions. The one big adjustment on the status, budget status, 5417, 4,000. It's all evidently, I mean, it looks like real property tax issues. We yanked it out of the tuition for students with disabilities. Are we looking at a decrease in revenue from that, or why did we take it all out of there?
You talking about transfers?
I think he's talking about budget
Sorry,
transfers.
few items down. Further down, we'll just talk
This
about
one,
treasury.
you talking about this one?
Okay,
Budget
that's,
transfers.
It's
A
gonna be
few more
H.
items down.
It's gonna be H. It's gonna be everything.
okay, all right, there it is. But they're all treasury reports. Okay, all right, I'll get it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? F passes 7-0. G, revenue and expense reports.
It is recommended that the revenue and expense reports for the July, August, and September of 2013 be accepted.
Motion? Thank you. Second? Thank you. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? G passes 7-0. H, budget transfers.
It is recommended that the September 30th, 2013 budget transfers be approved.
Motion? Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thanks, Beth. Discussion? Ed, you're sure?
Yeah, the budget, yeah, just a quick question. I mean, again, we just took it all out of tuition for students. I mean, is there?
Actually, it's going into tuition for students, that's an increase. So we're increasing the tuition, that line item was, we had an unanticipated change in student placement. We do, with budget, we do anticipate, we do try to increase that line item, to set aside money just in case we have students move in and we had more students than anticipated. So that is money going into that account.
The 54,000 going into that account? No.
44.
The 54,000 is going into the property tax, and
Nope, it's going into, I don't see where the 55,000.
He's looking on the last page, revenue budget status. This one? No,
this one.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were talking about transfers.
Well, it's
What is
the
this?
last page of transfer.
The last page of the transfers is the last, that's revenue
This is
anticipation.
the revenue budget status.
Okay, sorry, you were,
This is what he's talking about.
So,
we were at the
Was this
budget
a treasurer
transfers, I
report?
thought you were asking about
No, we
transfers.
thought he was talking about the revenue.
Yeah, I asked that question earlier, sorry.
That's right.
so
You were
was that right or wrong or?
You were in fact correct.
I was in fact correct, hey! That's one for me.
No, it was one below that. It was G.
Okay.
It was G.
Oh,
Yeah, come on.
Okay.
All right, can we, let's answer Ed's
Let's
question.
go back to
then.
revenue. The transfers. Okay, you were talking about the budget, the revenue status report?
Yeah,
You're
revenue,
asking about,
right.
I'm sorry, what was your line item?
We made an adjustment, the 54,000 increase to the real property tax levy. Evidently, there's just a little calculation error. But we took
Got it.
that cash from the tuition for students with disabilities. I mean, was it inflated and? or-
That actually was a result of, this is the chapter 721 students that we had talked about in August when we had set the tax rate,
Yep.
tax warrants. We had anticipated early on with, that's that IRA house, they call IRA house, where a number of students, we were anticipating a certain number of students that were going to be there. It's out of our control, they're students that are placed.
So we're not gonna have as much.
Right, and we are not getting as much, so, but we had an increase in, when we had set the warrant for the levy, when we set the
Right.
levy in August, that is where we
Okay,
took the money
so we're
from.
good.
Yes,
Okay.
so we reduced that area, increased, the levy, and that's what that is.
Thank you.
H, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? H passes 7-0. I, resolution of condolence.
The Board of Education of the New Hartford Central School District records with sorrow the passing of former librarian Nancy Spadafora. Resolved that the Board of Education express its sincere sympathy to the family of Nancy Spadafora, and that this resolution be spread upon the records of the district and a copy sent to the family. 2, the Board of Education of the New Hartford Central School District records with sorrow the passing of former teacher Paul Swancutt. Resolved that the Board of Education express its sincere sympathy to the family of Paul Swancutt, and that this resolution be spread upon the records of the district and a copy sent to the family.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? It passes 7-0. 7, other business. discussion regarding New York State Common Core Forum, which sounds like to me we had like a few hours ago. Paul, why do you wanna?
I emailed each one of you a proposal, and after our discussion last meeting at Mile, I was thinking about it. And then there was the meeting that was at Valentino's, is it? Which I did not attend, I don't know how that one went over at all. But I thought as a way for us to engage the members of our community in a proactive way, and just state to the students, parents, teachers, administrators, everyone involved, that we're with them, that we understand where they're coming from, to hold a forum, hopefully an open dialogue, and just discuss it. Give our proposal also about, at Miles also, Vince showed how much money we would lose if people don't take the test, if the cohorts had to take it, certain percentages had to take it. Give all that presentation, and I mentioned the auditorium, and I just thought we should lead the way and do that.
Yeah,
And I don't know how you feel about it, but you had to look it over, so.
Well, one of the ways we could have lead the way is adopted the New York State Teachers Resolution. That would have been a start.
Well, I don't think
I'm
there's any
trying-
question that we're going to.
It's two different things.
Yeah.
It's two different areas. My proposal is to sit down with the community at large, have them come in. If a parent in Catherine's class has a question, she could ask the question. If a parent in the junior high school or high school has a question, they could ask specific questions. And also, I think that once maybe some community members see that by not sending, well, not many students have their kids at home, but by not taking the test, you're hurting the district. And that was my intent with this. This is something else that we discussed in the committee, and it's not dead that we're not going to. In the committee, where it's got the two resolved, that we call upon the commissioner to have, and we call upon Congress, we agreed with those two things. It was some of the above the whereases that we disagreed with. It's not pertinent to New Hartford. That's the difference between the two.
Yes, there's a lot of things to discuss, it goes through my mind with this. But it's a great idea with the administration and with the teachers and with the board, all on the same page, understanding the pitfalls, understanding the problems, understanding and listening to the parents, and presenting information in a way that went over with Commissioner King, as Paul describes. Yeah, they might not like it, Catherine, right? Like you said, they might not like it, but at least the information is out there. Here's why it's happening. Here's what could happen good. You know what I mean? If we follow, here's what could happen bad if we just decide to opt out.
I'm sorry.
We're not, and I don't know about that meeting, I don't know how the meeting went at Valentino's.
Did any of you guys go
But
to
I-
Valentino?
I did.
I meant to, but I.
Which meeting?
I did.
Valentino's.
It was much different than what you saw because Commissioner King wasn't there, so it was not like a contentious.
Was this
It
at
was much more,
Valentino?
it was much more informative and letting parents know what the different concerns were regarding Common Core and testing and the data mining. So it was very informative, and so there were some students who spoke, there were some parents who spoke, and we didn't have any, none of the legislators spoke, but there were representatives there.
Was it accurate information?
I don't know how much was accurate as far as the numbers and things like that. But they were talking more about what the concerns were about the stress on the kids and the increase in testing when they did some numbers, it may not be the number of tests that a student is getting, but the seat time, even when you look at some of the hours of testing that the kids are putting in, has changed and things like that. So, and then, parents voiced their concerns of what their experiences were with their own children. So I think you saw more of that.
it was some information, some letting people speak when they had some questions.
Did they talk about, as Vince had mentioned, that it's mandated by the federal government, and then the state did this, and we're basically the messengers of Common Core?
I don't think that it was definitely not something that was, it wasn't New Hartford driven, there were a lot of other people from other districts there as well. So it wasn't like looking at, here, this is what New Hartford is saying, and you have to do this. It was more, these are all of our experiences with the Common Core and the modules, because some of the districts have decided to just flat out adopt the modules, which is causing, I think, one of the greatest concerns for parents, because the modules have shown some difficulties. They're not what their parents had hoped for their children. And so I think that, I don't know if those numbers were talked about, that 95% where we have to have, you know, for
No, but I
taking
think
that.
it was mentioned that testing is mandated by the federal
Yeah.
government, and that the hours, the number of hours, and then the state has increased the number of hours for each of those tests.
Right, but I don't think, it wasn't expressed as, they talked about what kinds of ways that you could speak up about your concerns. How could you show your concerns? Opting out is definitely one of the things that is on the table for a lot of them, that their children are having anxiety over this. I know people that are not going to let their children sit for the test at all.
Well, there's more and more signs up in the village,
Yeah.
as you're aware.
It is a very real possibility, and I don't know how many of them are aware of that, the money that is tied to that. I do think that that's probably at this point not their greatest concern, for experiencing the anxiety with their students right now.
I think there was also a big push to, just to inform parents that, you know, the teachers and the administrators
Their hands are
really, are kind of pawns in a state game, and to really reach out and be, you know, supportive of the teacher and not attack the teacher or the school. You know, so I
There's a
found that.
message to stay positive.
Yeah, so I thought that was really refreshing, and I feel strongly that because of that message, that there were not a lot of, students who didn't go to school on Monday, because they knew that it really was going to, in the long run, affect their children and the teacher. How are they gonna make up the work that they missed on that day?
That was a lot. I mean, even on some of the things that I've seen, people chose to send their student to school with just the message that we still support ourselves, with some of them wore T-shirts and things like that. Because the kids, they said, we're not putting more anxiety on, the kids have to make up that work, and if they're already stressed, we're not going to do that. And some of them left it up to their own child, like, what do you want to do? And a lot of them are terrified of missing a day, with what's going on. Depends on which level they're at and what stage of, I think our junior high kids definitely feel a little bit more stressed out right now. They're feeling it.
Thank you for your feedback. I guess, Vince, I would defer to you, because if we do this, it will fall a lot on you and your team. And.
Yikes.
That's exactly what he wanted to hear.
I mean, so if you wanna think about it and get back to Bob and let us know, I mean, I think, and I think it's a great idea, but I also don't want it to be, the King meeting where people are, on the attack. It's meant to be an informative meeting with crisp, clear answers and an open, fresh dialogue, but it's not meant to be a form of attack.
I just have a couple of thoughts. First, I suggest that we think very carefully about what is the purpose of the meeting. Is it to convey information, or listen for information, or a little of both? So I think that would be key as well. And I've been thinking, might we give thought to a survey as well? Because there might be people that want to express opinion but may not be comfortable at a microphone, or may not be able to come out. So if we're looking to gather some information from parents.
At last night's
Yep.
PTA council meeting,
Yep.
a meeting prior to last night, I had asked the PTAs if they could take a little survey at their own individual buildings. And at last night's meeting, one elementary school answered, as did junior high and high school. And basically what they said was, yes, it's difficult. Our children, some of our children are suffering, but as someone mentioned over here, stay the course. And we understand we're all in this together, we understand it's not the school that's driving this, and that was basically what each of the three of them all said.
That's great, that's great positive
It
feedback.
said there hasn't been enough time, it's been implemented too quickly, too much.
Do you think, again, there was I guess there was a meeting, and I just saw the paper in Baldwinsville, last night, and I guess the 2-hour meeting turned out to be a 4-hour meeting. You know, so again, my first reaction was, I think this is a great idea to get the information out, but then I get nervous about something like that. And I wonder if, just throwing this out there, instead of having this big open forum, what if we had a gathering of representatives? What if we had some teachers, some administrators, some members of the PTA, PTA council to come together and just sort of like talk about it, and, you know, we sort of get our message out and we get information out and we hear from them as representatives of these different constituencies, and maybe it's a smaller forum that would maybe have, not turn into a big, you know, gripe fest or whatever, and, I don't know, just throwing it out there as a.
The last night's meeting, I basically told them that what we've all mentioned here already. We're supporting the teachers, we're giving them time, we understand what you're going through, we're all in this together. You know, we see that, and I've gotta say, there's one, I don't do Facebook. But someone showed me something on Facebook, and it was a woman who was attacking King, Commissioner King, and she came up, and I don't know where she came up with it, she said it's the Common Core syndrome. Kids being afraid to go to school, I don't know if you've seen that.
Yes, I did.
Kids afraid, and she was like, right up in his face. But she said Common Core, like a Russell syndrome, a lot of kids
Oh,
with
yes, I did.
syndrome, they don't wanna go to school, they
Yep.
don't wanna take tests, if they're in school, they wanna go out the classroom, and that's where they're coming from.
My 2 cents is, I think it's a good idea, to have the board out front on this, because everybody's having issues, and so if we have this one, then we have to structure it so it doesn't get out of hand. But that's just a function of moderating it, setting it up, and getting buy-in from all the parties, the teachers, the administration.
A school,
Right.
a school, not
So,
board, not
because
teach,
there
school.
are, and I always ask people when they're protesting, who are you trying to speak to? Are you trying to get a message to school board, administration, Albany? So it's important, I just think, I think we need to be saying something.
I think it's to the parents and the traumatized parents, kids.
So I would support that.
I guess, just to wrap it up, Vince, why don't you, and thank you, Paul, for the idea, I would ask Vince that you take it back and look at it and come back with a recommendation. If your answer is we're too busy, our staff is in the midst of, you know, trying to implement, and we would respect that. Or if you think of a form that would work, that wouldn't be as much work for you, come back and give us a recommendation. Is that fair?
I would also ask maybe Mr. Hyde could be involved in that. With Vince.
Didn't know he was there.
He was trying to be really
Pipe
quiet.
down,
He
Mr.
was
Hyde.
like, that is true. Cover his face.
You're saying Alan who?
Ken, the other thing I've thought about since writing this up and since being at the PTA council is possibly going to the individual PTA meetings. John, if you attend Miles, you can just reiterate, we're in this together, we'll get back on this.
I already got an earful
Everyone good.
two meetings ago, and it was again, people were angry, but they didn't know who to be angry at. They wanted to, reach out. So that's why I'm saying, if we're gonna do this forum, I think we should do it sooner rather than later. Doesn't do any good to
That's
do
what it
it
says
now.
here.
And maybe it's a brief, maybe it's us presenting to them and then mingling afterwards, you know what I mean, so that it's not an open mic that we can. Just a thought.
Let me add, there is a kind of, on Monday, right, there's a math, I wouldn't call it a forum, but.
Monday, there's a parent workshop to help understand some of the components of Envision Math.
There's also a BOCES thing.
Great.
Yes, there is.
And I just heard from one of the PTAs that how great it was last year. She went and said that they were outstanding. So you're right, do we want to, at this forum, maybe one of the considerations is taking one of the modules and show them, or one of our curriculum.
Well, it's about Envision Math, so it wouldn't be about the modules.
Okay.
That was very.
Or,
But can I just say, I think in conjunction with what Paul is suggesting, and I think Ed mentioned the same thing, I think that it is important for this board in conjunction with the administration, in conjunction with the teachers, and to John's point, to make a statement about our position in the form of a resolution, however you wanna put it. But I think, to what you were saying, John, people are angry, they don't know who to be angry at, they need to understand concisely what the position is of the board. You know,
But
where
parents
we
aren't
stand.
gonna know that we adopted a resolution. Parents will know
No,
if there was a
but-
forum where they could say something.
But I think that that's something that we've talked about, putting things in the PTA newsletter. I think that that's a mechanism for that. I think that it is important for teachers not teachers, excuse me, students and parents to know that the teachers and the administration work together on this. Here's what we think.
Yeah, I'm not saying either or.
No, I'm just saying, I think that that's a first step towards communicating where we stand, and then I think to Vince's point, we need to know what the intention is. Is it to communicate information, is it to gather information, is it to communicate where, you know, ramifications to, you know, what's our plan, here are some of the modules, like, what do we want to
I
accomplish
would
with that?
think, I would think that's the right.
That's my last comment.
And this is my last comment. I think,
Like this one.
I think it would be comforting as just a parent, if they heard something coming from the school district, as opposed to from, I created an organization and I might have an agenda and I don't know if it's true, as opposed to coming to something that's put on by the district, the board. You have a little bit more faith that we're not trying to sell you something, we have no agenda, here is what we stand for. You know, that's where I think Paul's.
The other thing I think they should be aware of is that if so many opt out taking tests, we stand to lose Title I money, and then we have to spend more money in case somebody wants to take AIS outside the district, we still have to pay for that. So it's a loss of money there, and someone might say, I don't care, my kid's not taking a test. At least make them aware of the consequences, pros and cons.
Again, we're not trying to talk you into taking the test, we're just saying, here's the full picture.
Right, exactly.
Okay. So.
Now I'll shut up.
That's okay, thank you. Okay. I think we're adjourning and,
Did you get my other note about, Mr. Van Dauber's request?
yes.
Okay. Well, my only one concern on that one is, that's our only meeting in January, so I don't know how long that's gonna be. Okay.
We'll have special meetings.
Can I have a motion?
6:30 or maybe a little more.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Motion to go into executive session?
Also, executive session pertaining to the employment or the employment history of a particular person.
Thank you. Second. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?